各位，我哋而家繼續開會。我哋而家夠人。
We have a quorum, so please take a seat, members.
好，而家開始繼續開會啊！下一位毛孟靜議員，3分鐘。
Let's resume, Ms. Claudia Mo, 3 minutes. The government has floated this Kai-Tak Sports Complex proposal. At first, members were asked for their views on this project at the PWSC meetings. Of course, members supported the proposal because, after all, it's about development of sports. But now we're getting more and more concerned about the DBO model. You're not consistent. So you're cherry picking. You're only borrowing concepts to your liking, and then with your rhetorics, you can just repackage the whole thing, and it's really alarming. The second point is that the secretary earlier mentioned that the period of 25 years is quite long, so you admit it. 25 years, a quarter of a century. We may ask, well, why not 10 years, 20 years, or 25 years? You would answer, well, we've explained this point in the paper. But when we pursue this line, you further said that, well, we can do a review on the indicators in the interim, 10 years, and then 25 years is quite long. So 10 years is also a long time. So let's see what happens then. So you have all the say. And you're nodding. Do you agree that you have all the say? We're talking about some $30 billion. It's such a astronomical sum. Well, members from the pro-establishment camp, as usual, they are not being truthful as well. I don't recall which, but some a member said that it's not true that the Kai-Tak Sports Complex would be privatized. There is a time frame. We know, but the time frame is one of 25 years. How many 25 years do each of us have? And if you're talking about 2 contracts, and that's 50 years, half our lives, and you won't budge an inch whether or not we ask you. You won't budge an inch. You won't change anything. You haven't really saved the $60 million you so claimed. And then in the paper, you claim that this is in response to members' views and that you're taking the $60 million away from the incentive proposal. And you're not being truthful. Next, Ms. Lau Siu Lai. Deputy Chair. We've been discussing the same point at the Home Affairs panel, and back then I already questioned why it would be a period of 25 years. I wanted to have move a motion to suggest 10 plus 15 years. But Mr. Ma Fung-kwok, the chair, did not allow me to move this motion. Now it seems that you are somewhat backing down. But after all, when you consult, the panel is a kind of consultation. It has no real power. Still, I think that you are not being truthful. You said that $60 million would be taken out from the proposal, but it is not really money saved. And I really support Mr. Leung Kwok Hong's motion to adjourn the discussion of this paper, because the paper is not truthful. Like Dr. Yu Chung Yim said, about DBO, the funding model should be a single model, and you could not really justify your claim. You should give us examples that using this funding model it will be successful. There are problems with your explanation and the paper. And I thought about DBO and DBG. I didn't agree with LCSD's position. And for DBO, you talked about 30 days of events, and it's kind of inflated. I think you just you just play up the figure, because whether or not it's DBO or DBG, you will be able to include more events in the sports complex. For DBG, you have quoted 13 days. You should not underestimate the procurement experience of the government. And Mrs. Fong, you also told me about a lot of procurement projects in the pipeline that you personally have taken part in. I don't think that the government's experience is that bad. I think that the government will manage to attract organizers of events. So there are a lot of inconsistencies in the paper. You should take the paper back and consider it more carefully. Well, Chairman, you said that we have repeated our points many times, but this is on a topic. The discussion itself will not be repeated. For example, there could be different procurement models. Yesterday I asked about the air quality, but perhaps the Central Kowloon Routes EIA report could be inconsistent if that's what you claim. That could be air pollution. But never mind about that. I just want to get an answer from you how you're going to address the issue if athletes have their training there. I just want to solve problems. I don't want you to just pull those things through. I don't think it's good. Dr. Edward Yu, 3 minutes. Chairman, I exposed 3 crimes. First, incorrect information in the administration's paper submitted to the committee, misleading the public. Second, the DBO model of the Kai Tak Sports Complex is contrary to the 4 successful examples of DBO funding models claimed by the government. And even worse, in terms of funding, the government's proposal is against the efficiencies unit guidelines on funding or procurement in a public or joint venture model. If you don't allow us to ask questions and just let the proposal be pushed through, then this is a major crime. We're not talking about something trivial. You can't even meet the internal requirement on payments, not to mention examples around the world. The first example in itself is wrong and it's misleading. It's such a serious issue, and you're just allowing them to continue without letting us ask questions first. I'm still asking DBO, and you claim that I asked dozens of times already, but we are investigating whether they are misrepresenting the proposal, whether they're misleading the public, and why can't they follow the internal guidelines drawn up by the government. It's misconduct. You cannot just simply summarize. That is a repeat of the same words DBO. Because all members may be asking questions, and you could say that the questions have been repeated 1,000 times. There are 3 major crimes, and the administration is unable to give us a satisfactory answer. Yesterday, they claimed that this is a reasonable excuse, and that is about the definitions. They were unable to provide the source of the definition. They just created blindly this this definition on the philosophical DBO. Under such circumstances, you are unable to convince the public that the paper is the proposal is reasonable and just. Well, Secretary, Dr. Edward Yu repeatedly suggests that the administration's paper is misleading and it is a misrepresentation. Even if the proposal is not passed today, I think that you should follow up on this matter, because at the Finance Committee, I think this is a serious matter to raise such an allegation. Of course, if this allegation is made out there, it's an even more serious matter. But at the Finance Committee, members are protected by the electoral P&P ordinance. Still, I think that you should deal with this issue seriously. Yes, Chairman, Secretary. Since you raised this point, Chairman, for the past few days, whenever Dr. Edward Yu talked about inaccurate and misleading information in the paper, we put forward supplementary information and we also justify our claim. Of course, Dr. Edward Yu has his own views, but from our position, our paper is accurate, true and correct, and we just base our proposal on facts. Mr. Ted Hui, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I speak in support of the adjournment motion for the simple reason we have been discussing the paper for so many hours. Like Chairman said, we have discussed over 10 hours already, and yet when members question the administration, I find it hard to accept the administration's explanation. So objectively speaking, we may be spending hours discussing the item. I feel that members have been making valid points and constructive suggestions. It's just a question of whether the administration accepts our suggestions or not. On the other hand, we may think the same applies to us. So some members from the pro-establishment camp criticize us for getting in the way of funding approval, and they played the same tune. They talked about workers not getting jobs and workers losing their jobs. But it's not the duty of the electrical to ensure to secure employment for workers. We're talking about infrastructure projects funded by taxpayers' money, and we should ensure that the public money is spent properly. So I like Ms. Claudia Mo said that she mentioned a member saying that we're not privatizing the project. I remember it's Mr. Luk Chung Hong who said that. But indeed, it will be run on by a private operator on a commercial basis for 25 years, and it is unprecedented, as the administration puts it. We are not confident. We're not. Of course, we have no confidence in this government.
Designing the financing option and in taking a certain tendering approach, why you're giving us the impression that you are only seeking to benefit the business community. You say it's a concession that you pay them $60 million, but it is a lot of money, and you allow them such a long operating period. It's so difficult for us to monitor the performance during that period. The public would just not have confidence in this kind of tendering approach, and that you're spending so much money to benefit the business sector given this infrastructure project. The establishment members say we are so frivolous with adjournment motions. But on the other hand, they just support the government blindly all the time. Is it that the viewpoints of the Democrats are totally unreasonable? We have spent over 10 hours on this item, but the administration has not been able to answer any points made by us. I hope you reflect upon that. Mr. Leung Yu-chung, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I was asking about the vetting of the bids. The administration said many times that it would be done in a fair and just manner. But with regard to LCSD and FEHD contract companies which do cleaning work, there are always just a few of them. And if you say it's fair and just, I can't see that being done. And if you say there is no prejudice, I don't think it's true. And yet this is such a huge project, and still you just go by the same kind of mechanism. There will be no objective, independent people doing the vetting of the bids, and I think that will be problematic. Apart from the screening of bids, the main problem is that there will be a one-stop kind of contract. It is design, build, and operate. It will be done by the same contractor. When I don't really take part in a lot of LCSD activities, but Kwai Ching Theatre is managed by the administration. It is full house day after day. And the cultural center as well. Many performing groups come from other places, and it is also managed by the administration. But you have contracted out the Hong Kong Stadium and see how it is functioning now. It doesn't work at all. So does it mean that you can't operate your own facilities? I don't think so. The thing is, of course, there is always room for improvement. But the thing is, why don't you think about improving yourself? This is a major infrastructure project. You say it's too huge for you to manage. Why do you lose confidence? You can manage Hong Kong. How come you have no confidence in managing that facility? It boggles me. And now you allow somebody to manage it, and then the same contractor should design and construct the facility. However, you are paying for it. To me, this is unacceptable. It is a new approach. Perhaps it is too new for us. However, it is not just new, but I can't accept that mode. You are, in fact, telling us that you have no confidence in managing the facility. It's very strange to me. You have just a few days to go, and it will be managed by the next term government. Why don't you allow the next term government a chance to rethink the entire approach and operation, including the tendering mode? You can certainly do that. Why not? Why do you want to push it through before the 1st of July? What for? Except to do what C.Y. Leung had said he will do. Mr. Ray Chan, Chairman, I object to you saying that this is the last round of questioning. You did that before, yes, but every time, if members have more or less exhausted their questions, then we would not react a lot. Even if you let us know there is the CFA ruling or ROP, well, your power is not absolute. You cook up the figures saying that we have asked so many times. But first of all, you are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. If it is your money, if it is just $100 to be spent, and it's different. How can you say last time when we discussed an expenditure of just a few $1,000s, we should do the same this time when we are going to spend tens of millions of dollars? And about your statistics, even so, you should only ban questions on one certain area, say, for example, cost overrun or bid incentive. The most you can do is to control questions for certain areas. In fact, there are areas I want to go into which have not been even mentioned, like the facilities and the canopy. I can have 2 rounds of questions on the canopy. And the administration, of course, is now winding down. They are coming in smaller teams. If we ask engineering questions, there will be no one to answer us. I'm not saying you're conspiring with them, but they know that we only have 1 more minute, and they will say that your time will be exhausted after we state our questions. But we will have 37A, and if it is passed, we can reopen the discussion. Officials should come in a full team. You should not act as if the discussion is winding down and come back with such a small team today. Chairman, I said that even if you want to put a stop to questions, you should at least give us 3 minutes as a final round. But other members may think that this is unreasonable and they would propose for adjournment. I can see that they have every reason to do so. Mr. Edward Yu is saying that the content of the paper is misleading and the DBO doesn't follow the government's own definition, that it goes against the efficiency unit's definition. These are very serious matters. We need at least 2 rounds to question the government. And even if I have promised you there will be no more 37A, I would have to eat my words because what is mentioned now is so unreasonable. If they can supply evidence to rebut Mr. Edward Yu, we would welcome it. I am asking my staff to look into the Silho Wan project, whether that DBO is the same as this one. We need more time. No, your time is up. I'd like to reiterate. As the chairman, I chair the meeting and I act according to the Finance Committee procedure. If there are gaps in the procedure, we will go for court rulings. The High Court ruling is very clear. We must thank Mr. Leung Kwok-hong and another member who have allowed us to have clearer guidelines. When the Finance Committee procedure was written, there are things that are not mentioned, but because of the change in the political environment, there are now court rulings that we can follow. If you think the ruling is not correct, you can resort to your own means. Well, you can change the Finance Committee procedure, but as long as the procedure is still in its present form, I have to act in a fair and just manner. And I think I have already done my best to strike a balance. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong or Mr. Wu Chi-wai? What is the point of order, Mr. Leung? If you don't allow us to ask questions, it is the basis for a JR. You could be taken to court by me for a JR. I'm asking the administration whether they are not applying their wrong definitions. Therefore, this will be recorded, Mr. Chairman. If you think we have exhausted our questions, I will reserve my right to JR the decision to be made today. I have heard you, Mr. Leung. I have said you say that many times. If you go for JR, we welcome it, but please do not just mention it many times here at the meeting. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, 3 minutes. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, 3 minutes. Chairman. This is a motion for immediate adjournment of the meeting. In fact, in these last rounds of discussion, I think the major principle is still to build the Kai Tak Sports Park. No one is questioning the major direction, but of course we are worried about the operation of the main stadium. However, the issues that are still outstanding are 2. 1, the bid incentive. I asked the secretary and he said this is the best way to do it and he would not think about other approaches. Number 2, I remember I said there will be 3 facilities in the park, and I thought that there will be business facilities or business complex amounting to 60,000 square meters of such under the main stadium, and I was asking we need to think out in detail how it should be operated. But now there will be the main stadium itself and then the indoor sports center, and under the sports center there will be a 60,000 square meter commercial complex, and then next to that there will be a public sports ground. I think the difficulty about the operation would mainly apply to the main stadium. How it can be operated well so as to attract enough events to be held there. And secondly, one of the main objectives of the sports park is that after spending so much money in it, we want to create a stronger atmosphere for sports in Hong Kong. But now you have the DBO approach. We can't see how the operator will operate the sports park, will he go for his own benefit, or would he include public interest as one of his work objectives? If I have another chance to ask the Secretary, I would ask you again, when you decide on the scoring system, will you consider how the operator will enhance the sports atmosphere in Hong Kong, and how the space in the entire sports park will be used to enhance that atmosphere, that sports will be popularized in Hong Kong? Would this be part of the scoring system? This is an important topic as well. Mr. Gary Chan, 3 minutes. Chairman. There are 50 items that can create 33,600 jobs for FC this year. But because of filibuster by Democrats, we have approved not even 10% of the items, and we have only created about 10,000 jobs, and 26,000 jobs have not been created because of filibustering. Just now, Mr. Ted Hui of the DP said clearly just now that the LegCo is not here to help create job opportunities. That is not here to solve the problem of work for the grassroots workers. That alarms me. Any parliament should help the people create jobs. But Ted Hui actually said that. I think he is removed from reality. I don't know whether he went to the protest area and to see the aspirations of the construction workers. The DP claims it represents the public, and yet its member is saying this in the council. I find that most regrettable. If Pan Democrats have questions, I won't object to them continuing to ask the questions. But why support Mr. Leung Kwok Hong's motion to adjourn the meeting? I don't understand. If Mr. Ted Hui has so many questions, he should learn from the party chairman, Wu Chi-wai, who asks questions seriously instead of talking meaningless talk. I wouldn't like to help them filibuster. I wouldn't help to pass this motion, so I would object to the adjournment motion. Mr. Roy Kong, 3 minutes. Chairman, it's very simple. During this scrutiny period, I think every member has been asking questions in a serious manner. But then there are more and more questions. But this is not the Finance Committee anymore. It is just a fund allocation committee. Every time you come, you would say, we have started already. There is a budget overrun, so there is no way we should not give you a supplementary provision. And you would say, sorry, that decision was a little biased, and then the LegCo would have to face the consequence together. Now, we don't want a repeat of that. We have been scrutinizing the papers very carefully. From the bid incentive, you are going to give money back to the failing bidders, and up to $60 million or half of the bidding cost. And then you talk about the DBO, saying that DBG doesn't work. And it's said in the paper that if it's done by DBG, you don't have the expertise, there will be a lot of losses. And according to the present situation, you would still quote the Hong Kong Stadium example that there can be 13 days events only every year, but if it's a private operator, there would be 30 days every year. And if the government operates it, it would just be $360 per square foot or square meter, but if it is a private operator, it would be $840 per square meter. Let us look at the entire sports sector. Let us also think about popular sports. You say this will take reference from the LCSD ticketing system. No, this is wrong. If you want to have a good sports policy in Hong Kong, you should look at it from a macro angle instead of just providing the hardware. And how you are going to benefit the grassroots? Well, you will follow the LCSD example. But no, I can guarantee that later on this sports park will charge much more. And then you will tell us, look, this is in Kai Tak, of course, this is much more expensive. The basic thing is not whether the facility is expensive or not expensive. Just ask the frontline sportsmen, what have you done vis-a-vis the software in promoting sports? Have you respected them? I have been helping people in table tennis for 9 years, and I have asked them, do you think Kai Tak will be a comprehensive solution to the sports policy in Hong Kong? They said no. And now you are allowing a private operator to do it. But public money is used. Your time is up, Mr. Michael Tin, Deputy Chairman. Thank you, Chair. TV audience, I'd like to say a few things to you. First, I'd like to state that I totally object to this adjournment motion. Not too long ago, I remember in this position, I objected to the funding for extending Disney theme park because there are unequal terms and conditions. Now, against the same background, I'm telling the public that this proposal from the administration is a good one in that we are well positioned. This is a huge project. You have to look at the commercial, livelihood, and public interest sides of the project. You have to think through all the conditions and terms. But talking about the commercial part, operating a major infrastructural project and attracting people to come to use it, how can the administration have the capacity to do it? How can we rely on the administration to do it? You can't rely on them to do this. It doesn't work. You must tap into the expertise of private organizations. The important thing is we need to know how much of the facility can be used by local people. So it's important how you draw up the conditions and terms of the contract. You have to make sure that Hong Kong people will have certain usage of the facility. Well, I thought it looked like a good deal. And however, the secretary said something I could not believe. You are telling me that we have this deal, that it will be stated in the tender document, that upon review, if the other party adopts a laid-back attitude, even if they pass all the conditions, you have the condition to do something about it, that you can take them to task. And also, if they make a mammoth profit, you in fact said that if it is over $900 million, then you can have a bigger ratio of profit sharing to make sure that you would not allow the profit sharing not to suffice to cover the maintenance cost. Well, I think your option will allow this to be done. They would have to make a bigger profit than $900 million.
And under that scenario, we would receive more profit. You said that these would be specified in the contract. So after the interim review, you can request such changes. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok, 3 minutes. Thank you. At the protest zone of LegCo, we have a number of representatives from the Construction Industry Alliance. In other words, people from the construction industry, including professionals, workers, etc., and they are staging a protest here. We have dozens of construction vehicles here as well, and they have a parade here as a sign of protest. Due to filibustering here, the approval of new works or projects have been extremely slow. And the alliance was set up in 2014, and in the previous term, LegCo, the progress with public works approval has been extremely slow. And only $3.6 billion worth of new projects have been approved, and they are here every year for protests. The trade told me that they wouldn't want to be here if the approval of the new public works proceed in a normal manner. Chairman, this year to date, the Finance Committee only approved 4.8 billion worth of new public works, and another $12.4 billion in Capital Works Reserve Fund, but those are small projects. And those are smaller projects such as maintenance and repair. The trade hopes that new public works can be commenced as soon as possible, and we are not just talking about workers, but some professional practitioners like architects and engineers, and their livelihoods are being affected. As chairman of the Public Works Subcommittee, my role is to ensure orderly meetings at the PWSC. As of now, the PWSC approved about $65 billion worth of new works. But at the Finance Committee, I'm very concerned because there's a huge congestion on establishment and non-establishment items, and Hong Kong is taking a big hit. Our economy is taking a hit as well, and our future generation is also jeopardized. This is a letter issued by the Alliance. Let's stop mucking around. We need to do what we need to do at the FC. Mr. Nathan Law. Well, I agree with the final statement of Mr. Low Wai Kwok. LegCo should do its job properly. Mr. Gary Chan and Mr. Low Wai Kwok said, Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Yes, Mr. Low Wai Kwok lied about the DBO approach of the Siho Wan food waste plants. Mr. Nathan Law, can I start again because I was interrupted? I will give you another 10 seconds. Mr. Gary Chan and Mr. Low Wai Kwok both said the scrutiny of these projects lead to delays, and the construction trade is affected. And I was really confused because the job of legislators is to vet the approval of public works, because these works are paid for by public money. And what we said actually echo what Mr. Ted Hui said. We are not here just to approve or pass certain items. We need to make sure that the money is spent properly, or else the taxpayers will stand to lose. Every dollar we approve carries an opportunity cost. This project is worth more than $30 billion. If we improve the block allocations, a lot of frontline staff could benefit, and the public can also benefit. So I urge Mr. Gary Chan and Mr. Low Wai Kwok, if they want these items to be passed smoothly, you should not mislead the public. You should not resort to such things. The government should come up with proposals to convince LegCo. The Norwegian approach was advocated by Dr. Wet Yu, and this can help tackle the conundrum at LegCo. If the government had explained the differences between DBO and DBG since the first meeting, then a lot of problems could be avoided. We have a number of alternatives in terms of financing, the mode of payment, and whether the contractors have to bear 5% of construction costs. As for the retractable roof, is it really necessary? If the government had open up these issues for discussion earlier, then we would not be as stuck. And the Secretary said they are being responsible in presenting the best proposal. But did they consider that their best proposal might be different from the best proposal from LegCo's perspective? So in future projects, the government should allow for more discussions. Mr. Lam Kwok Hong, you have a minute. Gary Chan was not telling the truth. When we talk about universities, hospitals, or needy facilities for the grassroots, which are not white elephants, these facilities also create employment, and these opportunities can benefit Hong Kong people. All these white elephants adopt prefabricated parts which are manufactured elsewhere, and they are merely being assembled in Hong Kong. So what the FTU and DAB said were totally trash. For every $10 we spend, less than $1 would benefit Hong Kong people. I'm against the project, especially the $8.8 billion main stadium. The government should spend $200 billion on public housing, hospitals, and community facilities to help our local construction workers. Lo Wai Kwok is lying. He doesn't even understand what DBO is. Please stop speaking, Mr. Lam Kwok Hong. I now put the item to the vote. We will now adjourn proceedings. The bell will be rung for 5 minutes. We are now dealing with the motion to adjourn.
逐下啲公司會投標嘅，但係而家邊個投標都唔知。我想申報我啲。
I want to declare that my companies have all been registered with LegCo. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, Chairman. Like Abraham Sheck, I want to make the same declaration.
我提一提提一提各位同事呢，而家我哋即將
I'd like to remind members that we will soon proceed to the vote on whether we agree to the motion to adjourn.
係
葉禮謙石禮謙議員嗰個我都申報。
Like Abraham Shack, I want to make a declaration because I'm not sure whether my group will be involved.
現在停止表決。
Voting is closed. The results are shown. 19 for, 33 against, no abstention. The proposal is negatived. We will now resume the final round of questions. Mr. Wushiwai, 3 minutes. Thank you. I want to follow up on what I just said. In the government's reply to Dr. K.K. Kwok, they said that the main objective of the sports park is to promote sport, and we are not just talking about elite sport or mega events. We must also develop popular sport. Apparently, we are relying on the provision of venues in promoting sports for the masses. In terms of the tendering process, do the vetting criteria require the operator to make proper use of the sports park in developing popular sport in order to improve the overall ecology on sport development? And this is a substantial investment, and similar requirements are in place for the West Kowloon Cultural District. Are these requirements mandatory in the tendering process? And when vetting the bids, would there be specific criteria? For instance, if they can pay a higher guarantee, would they be given a higher score? Would you have such arrangement?
主席就到時嗰個嘅希望投標者佢入標嘅時候咧
We hope that bidders would follow the indicators we drew up. Mr. Wu's first question was about developing popular sport, on how that can be achieved through the indicators. There are 2 standards. First of all, the number of events, etc. So these are the minimum standards. If they can exceed the standards, they would certainly gain a higher score. The second criterion are mandatory. For example, for the indoor sports center, at least 2/3 of the time must be given to sport events. Operators are smart and they are experienced. Would they have to provide a holistic policy on developing sport? Would that be one of the criteria? We would not ask them to provide a plan or strategy. If they can provide it, of course, it's good. But we would focus on the indicators. Please switch on the microphone for him. Chairman, would you incorporate the element of promoting popular sport as a criterion? Would you ask the bidders to submit a plan? P.S. Our assessment criteria are somewhat different from other public works. We would adopt the 60-40 ratio. 60% of the scores would depend on the quality of the tendering document, and we would also look at the strategy of the bidder and how they can inject energy into the sports park, and whether they can fulfill our policy objectives of developing mega events, elite sport, and popular sport. And this would fall under the 60%. So you would not specifically require them to promote popular sport. If you have motions under Rule 34A, please submit them as soon as possible. Ms. Claudia Mo, you have 3 minutes. There is a pre-qualification process to the tendering. Let's assume that 5 groups submitted bids. There must be pre-qualification, because for those who do not qualify beyond the first round, they would not be given any compensation. And for the second round, let's say if you have 3 qualified bidders, the 2 screened out can receive a consolation. In other words, at the moment, there's no pre-qualification. You are assuming that there would only be 3 bidders and one of them would win. Is that the case? You talked about pre-qualification, so has it become meaningless now? We are conducting the pre-qualification, and we held a briefing earlier, which was attended by many companies. On the 21st of July, the pre-qualification period will lapse. We will see how many contractors can enter the next stage. If we have more than 3, we will select 3. And those who were screened out in the first round would not receive any compensation.
So basically, they just need to give you a skeleton proposal. Otherwise, why do they have to come? If they're screened out at the first stage without a cent of compensation, I'd rather not join the game. So about the pre-qualification, I think that this is just a matter of formality. In the press release, we have already set out the criteria for pre-qualification. For example, whether or not the bidder has experience in constructing large-scale sports complexes, and if the interested party meets the criteria and has experience. I'm sorry, Chairman, my understanding. I understand what you mean now. I think you also understand what I'm trying to say, but you are deliberately ignoring me. First, you propose a bid incentive to attract bidders, and then $60 million would be paid out only to the unsuccessful bidders who are shortlisted in the end. So that means you're encouraging bid rigging outside. Either you join my consortium, or if you go in as an individual entity, you'll be screened out, and it's a waste of time. So this is not constructive. We're going to shortlist 3 bidders, and they still need to work on the proposal before they reach a tendering stage. For example, they need to pay $100 to $200 million for the bid, and they must also meet all our requirements before the bid incentive will be provided. But for the pre-qualification, they don't need to put in a lot of resources. Mr. Ray Chan, I'd like to follow up on venue management. Should the government manage the complex, or should the private operator manage a complex? There are pros and cons to both, but the point is we don't want the new facility to be less accessible to the public than these facilities already managed by the LCSD, and there should be a channel for handling complaints. If you just pass the buck to the committee to handle all the issues, there could be difficulties and it may not be efficient. For example, Hong Kong is applying for the Hong Kong Gay Games 2022. Well, the Home Affairs Bureau has not given its support, but the Hong Kong Tourism Board And also some members of the EXCO support the bid. We have been shortlisted together with the US and Mexico for the large-scale international event. When the organizer applies for this facility, well, say the government may allocate 7 days for its use, but will there be other commercial considerations? For example, they rather give the available slots to more profitable events instead of approving international events. Secretary. For the main stadium and indoor sports center, in the future, the fees would be set at a level comparable to the LCSD rates. So basically, the same fee level will apply to both LCSD venues and high-tech sports complex. In terms of monitoring, I think the greatest difference with the property managed by Link REIT is that this is wholly owned by the government, and the Home Affairs Bureau will be responsible for monitoring the operator continuously, and where there is a problem, our public officers will be responsible for answering questions from members here. I also asked at the PWSC whether you can provide gender-free bathroom and other facilities. Of course, this international event is still controversial, and it's in 2022. And this afternoon, the government will announce a gender recognition consultation document. The WKCD has already undertaken to do this. I hope that you also give the same undertaking. At the PWSC, we already promised that same as a WKCD, we will provide a gender-free bathroom, unisex bathroom, and what about changing rooms? Yes, we will include that in our planning studies. Ms. Tanya Chan. Thank you, Chairman. I recall that when Secretary took up this post, there was an incident in which the Tsim Sha Tsui waterfront promenade was granted in terms of management right to New World. The Avenue of Stars has been managed so poorly for over a decade, and now the management right is granted to New World again. I think that this is in total contravention of the PPP guide. In 2008, the Chief Secretary's Efficiency Unit issued an introductory guide to public-private partnership, and the 2008 version is the second edition. So my question for your bureau is this. For your bureau and your the departments under your purview, do you still refer to the introductory guide? Secretary, this is an introductory guide setting out different practices and different models, and we basically decide on this model on the basis of this guide. So has the Secretary read this guide himself? Yes. How long ago? About the Avenue of Stars, as mentioned by Ms. Tanya Chan, I read it during that time. So it's been 2 years. I find this amazing. Chairman, unless Secretary has super memory, Dr. Edward Yu just now referred to 2 paragraphs therein, which categorically sets out what DOB means, DBO means. For example, well, page 139, I don't think, Secretary, you remember everything. It says that
be paid for an commissioning, on commissioning and subsequent payments will be only cover the recurrent cost of the service. 另外咧，喺頭先亦都講到咧，
just now, on page 57, again, it sets out that payment will only be made after the construction is completed and the facility is commissioned. So the DBO model proposed by the government is not genuine DBO. You just call it DBO. You are going against the internal government guidelines. So I want to know whether the Secretary should be held accountable. Well, as mentioned just now, there are different DBOs, philosophical DBOs, do you mean? I think that you can... Well, I think that it is said that the philosophers are in this complex. Why don't you invite them to come as well? I'd like to respond to Ms. Chan's claim. On the 16th of May, when we provided the supplementary papers to the PWSC, we explained clearly that these 4 examples are large-scale sports facilities developed on the principle of DBO. We're not suggesting that these 4 developments are exactly the same as Kai Tak Sports Complex in Hong Kong, because, like we explained, we cannot find any example using the same approach of DBO as we propose in Kai Tak Sports Complex. We're saying that the same principle applies, and that is DBO with one single consortium undertaking the development. And you also refer to the introductory guide to PPP. It's for reference for government colleagues, and it refers to terminology, practices, approaches, acronyms. Different jurisdictions may have different interpretations of these terms and on how these terms are applied in different jurisdictions. So there is no standard interpretation of these terms. As long as it adopts a design-build operation mode, then it is in line with the introductory guide. Mr. Eddie Chu. I'd like to pick up on Ms. Tanya Chan's point. Well, for the introductory guide back then, there must be a basis for you to draw up this guide. And if this is now a departure from the guide, is the departure justified in your view? I'm not quite sure what you mean by a departure from the guide. It talks about DBO, DBFO in the guide. But for DBO, it means that the payment will not be made until the construction is completed. This is not exactly what is mentioned in the guide. There are different models. Dr. Edward, you mentioned the word commissioning.
Capital costs will be paid for on commissioning, and subsequent payments will only cover the recurring costs of the service。咁呢個嘅 commissioning 呢個字咧，其實喺當然有啲嘅情況底下，嗰個嘅私人嘅承辦商係會。
So that means that the contractor will be paying upfront, and then it will also be reimbursed by the government later. We have such examples in the past. And there are also other examples using the public works model. For example, sewage treatment facility and also organic waste treatment facility. It also adopts the same approach with government paying in phases. I think that other members will follow up on this part in due course. Dr. Edward Yu. Request to have information of the agreement given to the members for discussion, and the administration said it on a point of fairness. They will need to reject our request, and then Deputy Chair asked questions repeatedly before understanding finally the crux of the tender document. Now you said that you cannot disclose the details of the tender document and the contract, but can you give us a checklist so as to reassure the Deputy Chair, so that you don't just answer our questions and keep information from us if it is not asked? Can you give us this checklist? Because at the moment I don't see this checklist. It seems that it's very fragmented. You only answer when we put questions to you. Secretary, now we have had a lengthy discussion, and we have submitted quite a stack of papers to the committee. And if want to pursue any question in relation to whatever part of the document, we'll try our best to answer. I think that this is normal. But if you want to have a checklist of the stack of documents, I think that we can just list out the documents that you should refer to. Dr. Chen Xiongtai, I agree that members are concerned about the principles of DBO and the contract. I don't think that this is just a moot discussion. I think it is about actual operation, and our concerns are justified. For example, in the paper, it is said that if this model is to be adopted, there will be 8 hectares of public open space for use by the public. But I think that the members' concern is about public's use, and also how a balance should be struck between the public's right to use the facility and enhancing efficiency by way of a commercially operated facility. I want to know the portion where the portion of which the operator can lease out, so that we understand why the public open space, whether it is like the public space managed by the LCSD at the moment, or whether it will be something like killing bird species and something like the public open space at Times Square, where it is controversial. I want to know how you strike the balance. About the 8 hectares of public open space in the future, it will be operated in a similar manner as the parks managed by the LCSD at the moment. Sometimes we also rent out space for holding activities by the public. We will implement similar arrangements, and advance bookings will be accepted. There will be 42 activities held in the public open space, according to our estimate. And it could be, it may not be profit making, it could be some non-profit making organizations holding carnivals, etc. Otherwise, we request that the public open space should be accessible by the public 24 hours. That's exactly my concern. Of course, there are rules to follow, but if a contractor operates the park, then how can we make sure that the public will have the same level of access to the public open space? I want to know the criteria in this regard. Yes. At the moment, we do not intend to rely on Cap 132 Public Municipal Services Ordinance to monitor the use of public open space. We'd like to make it flexible. For example, we are drawing reference from the WKC, the authorities' management of parks, and they are giving more flexibility. They allow pets in as well, and we hope to follow suit. Mr. Leung Yiu-chung, 3 minutes. Indeed, Chairman, is it better for it to be managed by the government or a private operator? Is debatable. However, where there is a complaint, if it is managed by the government, for members, it is really convenient to lodge a complaint and communicate with the government. Recently, an organization has applied to use a theater, but the drama itself is political, and they have been in the queue for so long, and I have been able to discuss with the LCSD, and this is the advantage of a government-operated facility. I don't know whether this will happen in the future. Second point, political incidents. I don't know how you will deal with it. I don't know whether you will put political hurdles to say by charging high fees or restricting use by some members of the public. I don't know whether such hurdles exist. 2 points. First, on communication. Of course, we encourage the operator to liaise closely with the public. We also have an advisory committee comprising different stakeholders, including council members, to establish close ties with them. And third point, we do not have any political consideration on the use of venues. On the 1st of July, for example, there are different organizations which wish to make their voices heard, and we are a pluralistic society. We don't think that this problem will occur. Well, it's easy for you to say, but in terms of approving applications, we want to make sure that there won't be any political hurdles. I understand that an organization has been applying to use the LCSD venues, and they have tried many times, and they are actually the first few in the queue, but they haven't been successful. So you need to say to the public that there is no political screening, there is no political hurdle, and you need to make sure that all organizations will be eligible to apply. To ensure that there is no political screening, we will have to make sure that in the agreement there will not be any terms on political screening. But what happens if the application is not approved in the end? Recently, I answered the question on using the Victoria Park or other LCSD venues. We have a set of open, transparent set of criteria. It's available online and it's established and effective. Mr. Roy Kwong. First, I'd like to get more information from the Secretary on the details of the committee. What is the membership of, what is the composition of the committee? How are the percentage of representatives from the sports sector, from the public, etc.? Say for the sports sector, we have different tiers. Will the lower tiers be able to give their views in the committee?
I'd like to know the composition of that committee and also how are you going to call it. And secondly, I'd like to talk to the Secretary about Hong Kong sports policy. It's very messy. Ask people who support sports in Hong Kong. Many of them have had very terrible history to tell you. Even for elite athletes, their income, their treatment cannot be compared to that in other countries. It's very difficult to them to pursue their ideal. You have not really thought about a sports policy for Hong Kong. Now this is the sports park. It is the hardware. I have said hardware is important, so is software. When the committee is to be set up, how many people will be there? Who will compose it? And what are you going to call it? And your sports policy? Secretary. It will be called the Kai Tak Sports Park Advisory Committee. It will be composed of representatives of the sports sector, athletes, entertainment industry representatives, LegCo councillors, district councillors, and also professionals. What is the membership like? We haven't decided on the number of members and also the distribution of members. It is only after the PWSC that we knew we want to do a good job with members, and that is why we are proposing this. But we will be all ears. Does it mean that the CE will be appointing the members? No, we will be appointing the HAB. And as for sports development, especially athletes, we have the $7 billion fund, and we are adding $1 billion to it recently. We are actually supporting elite athletes with a lot of effort. Mr. Roy Kwong talked about retirement. Some NSAs are starting to recruit retired athletes. And for trainees, yes, they may be having difficulties attending school and doing sports training at the same time. We understand that the Sports Institute has signed a memorandum of understanding with universities so as to allow elite athletes to do both. Mr. Nathan Law, Chairman, the financing option or the payment by government is going against the guideline of the efficiency unit. This is very clear. The efficiency unit says that the definition of DBO is that the construction must be completed before the government pays up. But the administration says no. You only act according to its basic principle. But still you can't alleviate our worry. Why do you want to go against the definition of the efficiency unit? Why don't you follow the definition that you pay only after construction, but you pay along the way? I need your response. Why do you depart from the efficiency unit definition? Why have you chosen a different way of paying? What are the considerations? Number 2, did you or did the EU give any advice on this project? Number 3, what benefits are there for the government vis-a-vis this payment method? Secretary, or who can take the question? PS. Let us look at the entire guideline. In 2.4, there is a table.
And payment for a facility service differ. 佢當中係比較一個傳統嘅方法。
It compares a traditional way and the DBO way. Under the DBO way, it mentions, and I am going to quote,
Under the DBO is for initial capital costs to be paid during the construction stroke upon commissioning of the facility. 即係話其實咧，就算我哋
In other words, even in the guideline, we can pay during construction or upon commissioning. Therefore, you cannot say we go against the guideline when we pay along the way. Chairman, yes, there is some flexibility here, but there is a footnote on page 7.
即係其實你有兩個唔同。
Meaning, there are 2 ways to do it, but usually it is upon commissioning. And the administration has to explain why you go for the other way. I just want to have an explanation. Okay, I won't be bogged down by the definition. What are the benefits for government by choosing this other way? The administration is following the usual way for capital works projects because we are asking for capital works funding. And that is why we are paying along the way as usual. We are not paying the whole sum up front. We are only paying half and then the other half upon commissioning. Well, this is exactly where the contradiction is. Usually that tradition is applies to capital works projects, but the DBO approach is new, and the EU says is usually you will pay only after construction is completed, and you have to balance the 2 options. Can you tell me your considerations before choosing one of the 2? PS DBO is a procurement method. It combines design, building, and operation. We can choose paying along the way or upon commissioning. But in the paper submitted to LegCo, we are saying we will pay along the way, and we are proposing a cash flow for the different years. Your time is up, Mr. Jonathan Ho. I don't know whether Mr. Nathan Law is still an undergraduate. He is at such a level that he must be a first-year university student because he is bogged down by so-called definitions. Because a concept covers different areas, and as long as your concept is clear and you can pay along the way, and this is already explained in the paper, whether you call it DBO or other names, as long as it is clear how the payment is made and what payment is paid at what time, you do not have to be bogged down by definitions. This is, I think Mr. Nathan Law is still at the level of a first-year undergraduate student, and he should be asking this question at a tutorial in university only. And some people are suggesting or scaremongering that there may be bid rigging. Well, yes, it is a valid question. But why is there bid rigging in building maintenance? It's because the information is not transparent. It is because there is a lack of information that bid rigging is possible for building maintenance. But so many civil servants are watching over this one. The information will be in the public domain. How can certain companies engage in bid rigging? This is not the same as building maintenance. There may be very small companies which are not known, and they may be combining together in some corrupt act. But this one, it requires really major and well-known companies to bid, and there cannot be a big chance of bid rigging. So please do not scaremonger. That isn't quite immoral. And then the Secretary should talk to the CED Bureau about popularization of sport. We asked this question 2 days ago. We said how you can popularize sport. You really have to organize programs for the public to view major events. Sorry, am I digressing? So when we asked this oral question, we said the HA Bureau should subsidize certain matches which may not be as popular as the South China soccer team. Maybe you can subsidize local table tennis or volleyball matches. You can allow public broadcast through RTHK or webcast or something, so more members of the public can watch these events. You have to allow these tournaments to be in the market so you can popularize sports, and then this will help you promote sports. Thank you, Mr. Leung Chi-Chang. 3 minutes. I have some questions on the financial arrangement, the consultancy fee for contract management. I believe this is about looking at the progress of the project. We are talking about $20 billion for contract management, and under it there is contingency and also price adjustment provisions to the tune of almost $500,000. Are you going to factor this into contract management? Because it should represent a certain percentage of the project cost. It should not be a fixed sum. Say the contract sum is $31.8 billion. But what if the contract sum will just be $28 billion? Will contract management consultancy be cheaper then? Thank you. It will be about $300 million for contract management. It will be managed by the administration. Our consultant will manage the contract for ourselves. But is that going to be a percentage of the contract sum, or is that a fixed sum? This is about our own estimate, and that is in the coming 5 years. So you will not use the contract sum as the basic figure. Well, no, they are helping us. So you're talking about a fixed sum regardless of the contract sum. That is correct. Then actually I'm worried that this will fluctuate according to the contract sum. Secondly, in fact, this has been asked already, but I'm not very happy with the PS answer. Supposing, just in case, after tendering, there will be cost overrun during construction. You said that if it is caused by the contractor, you will penalize him, but if it is not caused by him, you may have to come back for a supplementary provision. Is that right? Chairman, I don't know what you mean by in the normal circumstance. No. There are many projects that require supplementary provision from us. The thing is, if there is something unforeseen and there is cost overrun, does it mean you will come back to us for more money? Right now, we can't see any situation which will require supplementary provision by LegCo. In the past, it may be insufficient ground investigation that causes a cost overrun, and so the administration has to pick up the tab, and therefore we come back to you. But we have said that in this project, the unforeseeable circumstances would be very little because we have done all the advanced work. Therefore, the case of the administration having to shoulder the cost overrun is very slim, but you cannot give us any undertaking. Time is up. No more members have pressed the question, and we have terminated, and we have come to the end of the questioning period. And now we would deal with 37A motions. These are motions under 37A on FCR 2017-18-14, and we are going to decide whether these will be dealt with. The first one from Mr. Edward Yu. Do I have to read it out? Someone claims a division and the bell will ring for 5 minutes. I move that in accordance with the 3 successful DBO examples which are philosophical in the rest of the world, we would request that first of all that the construction costs should be supported by the contractor and be paid by the administration only after construction. This is drawing from the example of Moncton Arena. And then the contractor should take up 4% of the construction cost. This is from the example of Rogers Place. Number 3, the contractor should pay $230 million construction cost. This is an example of the SunTrust Park.
有22個。
There are 22.
都未定啊，係啊。嗱，我請大家
Members, if you still have 37A, please submit them as soon as possible because I will stop accepting them very soon. Let to remind members that this is the first motion under 37A, and we are going to vote whether we should deal with it. Members, please proceed to vote. Voting shall now stop, and the result is displayed. 15 in favor, 29 against, no abstention. I declare that the committee will not process this motion. Chairman, Mr. Gary Chan, in accordance with Finance Committee Procedure, paragraph 47, I move a motion to shorten the voting bell time from 5 minutes to 1 minute. Mr. Gary Chan moves a motion under paragraph 47 of the FC procedure that in the case of another division being claimed, members should proceed to vote after the bell has rung for 1 minute. I think Mr. Leung Kwok Hong should speak first. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, you have a question. I object to this motion. Well, if you object, we will have to allow you to speak. You have 3 minutes. Why do I object to this motion by Mr. Gary Chan? What is the point of order? Sorry, speaker not coming through. Sorry, speaker not coming through. I hope it will be put on record. The clerk, please attend to it. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, why I object to the shortening of the division bell from 5 minutes to 1 minute. After so much argument, members who move motions under 37A are doing a meaningful thing because we want to discuss the issue more before we vote on the project. Most of the pro-establishment members are not in the room, but of course they may have other duties to attend to and they may be in their offices. But if you really want to discuss the matter, and if you allow us a few minutes to discuss whether we should reopen the discussion, I think that is something quite legitimate.
This funding exercise is like a Russian doll. There are many layers, and you don't know what is beneath each layer. And after you reveal the next layer, you might find something you did not expect. And the government's performance has been amazing. You know, they did not use their mouths honestly, and for people like Lo Wai Kwok, it's a dishonest use of honesty. They have been making accusations towards filibustering. Well, I saw those people. Just like the taxi drivers, they are being paid for and they are given meals. Come on, let's be serious. I know a lot of construction workers, so well, they are asking for more money, you know, because they have a lot to do today. Of course, not everyone is being paid. We asked a lot of questions, and now we are going to proceed to the vote in such a rash manner. We don't even have the chance to speak, so I'm definitely against it. At least we should be able to speak. And I want a verbatim record. And I might need it for judicial reviews in the future. Mr. A. Chan, Chairman, I want to make the reality clear. There are 69 members at the Finance Committee. In principle, the FC would not overlap with panel meetings so that our members do not have to go between these two at the same time. And in principle, FC meetings should not overlap with other meetings. When we look at the agenda today, this morning at 9 a.m., there's an overlap with the Electrical Commission meeting, and 9:45 we have 2 meetings with the district councils, including Yao Qinmong and Kwai Ching. Since this is an extra meeting, you said it's difficult to cancel other meetings. I think the principle is that FC cannot overlap with other meetings. If you do not find the FC important, if this is what you are going to do, then you can hold council and finance committee meetings at the same time, if you like. Since members have to go between different meetings, it's utterly inappropriate to shorten their speaking time from 5 minutes to 1. If the 60-odd members choose not to be here, that's a matter of choice. Watch out. You know, members could easily hurt themselves because they have to come in and go out all the time. This is not ideal. So I hope that in the future, FC would not overlap with other meetings. So sometimes government officials want to meet me on Friday, but I would say no because I have to stay here for the amendments at council meetings. The nature is different, but the motions moved under Rule 37A are all independent and different. I would not fall into the trap because the chairman might move forward the deadline for accepting motions under Rule 37A in the future, but this is not right. And sometimes I might consider withdrawing some of my motions. I will move 6 motions under Rule 37A. I want to give enough time for the government to answer. Mr. Ted Hui. Chairman, every time I need to spend some time criticizing you. In every FC meeting, you shorten members' speaking time. Today is a little better because you allow members to speak for 3 minutes at times. So that is an improvement. A lot of members, however, are still waiting to speak and they are stopped in their tracks. You are drawing the line on motions moved under 37A. I think you are still abusing your power. You decided to shorten our speaking time, so we will voice out using this time slot. As Mr. Ray Chen said, the more dominating you are, the less trust you will receive, and the more we will speak. So Andrew Leung has to give way to you at the council. So this is really a form of protest. Why are we getting less time at the council? And why couldn't the motions moved by Mr. Andrew Wan be discussed? Perhaps the pro-establishment camp would think that we are just standing in the way by filibustering. But when a government lacks authenticity or popularity, there would be a lack of trust from the public because they would think that the government does not represent them. And there's a feeling that the Kai Tak Sports Park is biased towards the business sector because that is the impression of the public. There is a difference between DBO and DBG, and the public believes that the government can do a better job, but they fail to do so. That's why we had to keep asking questions which have not been answered. In terms of the financing arrangement, why do the bidders only need to pay so little? And all these issues arise from a lack of trust. Gary Chan said, we are standing in the way of the construction trade. You are just blindly creating employment at the expense of taxpayers. Is this what you want? We have to gauge whether this is appropriate. Mr. Ted Hui, you are repeating yourself every single time. I don't think you are going to help. If you do not understand why I have such powers to make a decision, perhaps the clerk can give you a copy of the relevant documents. The chairman has the right to preside over the meeting and facilitate the orderly progress of this meeting. The chairman can set time limits or even stop the discussion. If you continue to speak, I have to waste my time in responding. I'm afraid that the public might think that you're right. You have been saying the same things since day one. I hope that you won't waste any more time. Mr. Roy Kwong will rest easy, Chairman. This morning, members were in a hurry. Just now, someone almost tripped over. This morning, the Yau Chin Mong District Council and Kwai Ching District Council visited LegCo to give their views. And LegCo members had to learn about these livelihood issues. And for my motion on an act to protect animals, I'm not even talking about that. We have 4 sessions of FC today. Obviously, you are trying to pass this project, the Kai Tak Sports Park. We asked about the makeup of the advisory committee to the KDSP. We don't know the process, we don't know the composition, and you said you would decide later. But then this advisory committee will monitor the operation of the park. Mr. Jonathan Ho called out Mr. Nathan Law as saying that he is speaking like a university, a year 1 student. He talked about the so-called unpopular sport, and I thought he's talking about things like cricket, but he said sports like table tennis. Come on. I thought he spoke prepared. I think you heard about the FIVB volleyball championships, and it will take place again this year. Hong Kong's sport policy is a mess. We need hardware and software. And for hardware, you are allowing a private operator to operate the venue for 25 years. There are a lot of concerns. That's why they are promoting the setting up of an advisory committee. But right now, we do not know anything about that committee. We don't know about the process, the makeup, and the HAB will likely appoint people inside. If the private operator refuses to listen, what will happen? Ling Reed are not even sending their representatives to district council meetings right now. So there's nothing we can do. Have we had ample discussions on this? The more questions we put, the more question marks we have. If you are going to introduce extra meetings, they clash with many other meetings. Members, let's get the logic straight. Why do we need an 8-hour meeting? Why do we have an overlap of meetings? Then that is, we are falling far behind, and the public is very disappointed because a lot of things could not be done. If instead of blaming yourselves, you are blaming a chairman who tries to convene more meetings. So let's be fair. So you know, there's you have to stick to the facts. We will have our recess by mid-July. We will continue to be paid. But what about the public and the trade? They are suffering. Ms. Ellis-Mack. Every time we reach this point, then we are going through the same motions, you know, shortening the time from 5 minutes to 1, and people talk about all kinds of excuses, you know, people in a hurry, members tripping over. Well, recently members have not talked about the need for a toilet break, but I think the motivation is the same. They just want this to drag on for as long as possible. I believe that there might be a political motive, but when you speak, you should not stigmatize members of the public who just want to speak out. For the protesters from the construction trade, you talked about them being paid or receiving meals. I think you are, this is going too far. Members might have different political views, so whatever you say, well, you can say whatever you want, and we would understand or you know, put up with you. But you should not attack the public or the construction workers or their families. This is totally unacceptable. They were here very early this morning, and what for? If this is not a Friday, more people would come. You could never rationalize the harms of filibustering. Because of your filibusters, our construction workers are reaching tipping point. You cannot say that all those people are receiving money or meals, or they are told to do so. Are you just trying to make yourself feel better, or are you trying to mislead the public? If people care so much about what the district councils say when we talk about the universal accessibility program, well, there's a major congestion at LegCo. Projects approved by district councils cannot be discussed at LegCo, and they cannot receive funding. So do not stigmatize the construction workers and their families. Don't accuse them of being here just because they are receiving meals. Just ask your conscience. If you feel better by doing so, then I have nothing more to say. But this does not rationalize or justify the filibustering. Mr. Nathan Law, 3 minutes. I object to the shortening of the bell because a lot of people here obviously need more time to gather their thoughts. And just now, Mr. Ho, who received 0 votes, perhaps he could not listen very well, and his brain also did not operate very well. He tried to use my educational qualifications to judge my capability. This is a serious accusation. If he feels that qualification is equivalent to capability, he just needs to look at the pro-establishment members all around him. You know, I'm always very fair. I never thought that educational background is related to capability. Mr. Jonathan Ho is a graduate from is a master's graduate from CUHK in philosophy, and he illustrates that capability is not related to education attainment. And Ms. Ellis-Mack's teammate criticized another member of not graduating from university. I think industry really needs to think about it. For the remaining motions under 37A, they are about DBG, DBO, and other things we have covered, as well as the issue of definition. This is not something I promoted. It was Professor Edward Yu. If is he doubting a university graduate? So perhaps as someone who never had to win votes to come to be voted into electrical, perhaps he didn't know how it works. But that's about a university professor raised this question about the definition of DBO. So we should not pay that much focus on education background. A lot of pro-establishment members only graduated from secondary school, but they can still speak very well and they have good achievements. So stop giving these such inferior statements. You are getting 0 votes. I think no one would want to expose themselves. You know, some people need more time to gather their thoughts. So I'm against the shortening of the bell. Dr. Edward Yu, 3 minutes. Thank you. Thank you very much. And in terms of the definition of DBO, I did raise this issue first. I want to refer to para 6.3 of the internal guidelines of the government. I'm also being restricted by the chairman himself speaking time. When you look at the government's internal guidelines, para 6.3, the title is called Why Transfer and Share Risks. Through private-public collaboration, we need to mitigate risks properly. The golden rule is that the most capable risk manager should get the job.
And in paragraph 6.3, there is a picture. It states that if the DBO model is adopted, well, please, Dr. will you please come back and discuss why you oppose shortening the division bell time from 5 to 1 minute? Well, I proposed a 37A motion just now, and members just hurried back without understanding what my motion means. So they didn't have the chance to read what was projected on the screen, and they had to vote in just 1 minute. But you say that I am still referring to the definition, but this is not true. We need more time. For the motion moved under 37A, the first item is about the government's consultant quoting the payment method of the governments in those successful examples. And it's set out in paragraph 6.3 how we can effectively control risk to prevent contracts under PPP, to experience certain scenarios. For example, the operator making gain without having to take up risks. So it's not about whether the remarks come from a university freshman, but then there should be effective control, risk control. When adopting DBO contracts, you need to be prudent. You need to consider carefully how you can properly manage risk. If you do not have risk management, then we have a $31.9 billion project and it may not end well. Last time, according to their examples, I already explained that in one of those examples, actually that didn't end well. Mr. Lam Chuk Ting, I also agree that we should keep the division bell time at 5 minutes because the pro-establishment camp is beginning to get irrational when they make remarks to criticize us. Just now, Mr. Kai Ming attacked Mr. Nathan Law on his academic qualifications. And may I also borrow the remarks from Mr. Porcher in the UGL committee. Please use common sense. I don't want members from the pro-establishment camp to attack members on their academic qualifications. This will not do any good to the pro-establishment camp. And I also remind Mr. Ho Kai-ming not to dwell on the academic qualification point. It will do your camp no good. I'll adjourn the meeting now, and please come back at 3:15.